Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Government House for the Winter Conversation. Today, in contributing to public discourse on issues that help create a strong and dynamic community, we're going to be exploring the topic of courageous women in the arts. Could I please ask that you put your mobile phones to silent? The session is being live streamed on Facebook and will be available later on our website should you wish to view it again or show it to friends. There will, as usual, be not only an opportunity to ask questions at the end, but we want to try and devote at least half the session to questions and answers, so please do prepare yourselves. Today, Her Excellency is in conversation with Emma Fay, the Deputy Director of the Art Gallery of South Australia, and Rachel Azzopardi, Co-founder and Creative Director of Illuminate Adelaide. Emma has a graduate diploma in art history from the University of Adelaide and a Bachelor of Management from the University of South Australia, and an extensive background in advocacy, strategic planning, business development, fundraising, marketing and communications. She's the former CEO of Guildhouse, a not-for-profit organisation supporting South Australian visual artists, craftspeople and designers to build and maintain sustainable careers. As Deputy Director of the Art Gallery, she played an important role in coordinating the current exhibition, Dangerously Modern, Australian Women Artists in Europe, 1890 to 1940. Dangerously Modern is the first major exhibition to focus on the vital role of Australian women in the development of international modernism. And it's at the Art Gallery of New South Wales at the end of this session, which is on 7 September. So if you want to see it, get there before 7 September. Rachel Azzopardi's 25-year career in the arts is well known for its diversity, working across multiple art forms, including music, theatre and dance. After many years interstate, working in senior roles at Sydney Theatre Company, Sydney Festival and Chunky Move Dance Company, Rachel returned to Adelaide to co-found Illuminate Adelaide with Lee Cumberledge. Illuminate Adelaide is a unique festival of light, sound and technology. Committed to making Illuminate an accessible, immersive and citywide experience, Rachel and Lee have produced an incredibly popular festival with more than 1.3 million attendances in 2024. Government House is proud to participate in Illuminate's City Lights program this year with a projection by Spanish artist Javier Riera, which starts this evening. Named A Path of Light and Time, it's on the Government House facade and we encourage you to come back this evening or over the next couple of weeks to see it. Please welcome Her Excellency and her guests.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I note this is the second in this year's Winter Conversation series and we have brilliant sunshine outside. I just wish that were always the case in spring, summer and autumn, but never mind. It's great to have you here today. I'm going to start in the way I always do on Kaurna country with an acknowledgement in language. Kaurna bogana aidea, Kaurna miana aidea, yaichi miana aidea kumatana yartananku. Nautuna tampandi, Kaurna miana, yaichi yatamatana, bukininanku yalaka takarecha. I acknowledge and pay my respects to Aboriginal people, whether from Kaurna country or other lands and regions, and I also acknowledge the Kaurna as the traditional custodians from the past, today and into the future. Now, before we get too much further into this, can I just check that everybody can hear? We've got sound technicians who've been here all day trying to ensure that that will be the case, but if you think you might struggle, please just raise your hand if at any point you can't hear. I also note, I think we've got 3 seats in the second row down here if anyone wants to move up. As always, we welcome just here on this bit here, if anyone wants to move up, and latecomers will be welcome. So yeah, please come along. And it feels a bit like Writers' Week, doesn't it? Everyone's looking for the empty seats, which are always then filled at the front. No next session to mind your place for those. All right, let's get going then, and let me start with a very heartfelt thanks to Rachel and to Emma for joining us today. I'm curious, and I'm sure the audience will be too, to know what drew you to careers in the arts, and we're going to start with a 2-part question because we'll warm up for what could be multiple part questions later on. So what drew you to careers in the arts, and who are the women artists who've inspired you, past or present? Rachel?
It's on me first. Oh, goodness.
I know you were about to throw the air out on one note.
I was going to get, it's always hard going first. Wow. So I've always loved the arts. My whole life growing up, I think my mum took me to a wonderful event of Marcel Marceau. Do you remember him?
Yes.
A fantastic mime artist. And I think I was about 10 years old, and I just found it incredibly, it was like magic. It just instilled an absolute love for sort of performing, and that's what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be a performer, and my father played a lot of opera around the house and wonderful music, and so I decided I did want to be an opera singer. So I actually started out at the Elder Conservatorium here in Adelaide, and I studied voice, and I wanted to be an opera singer. And I sort of started realising I got to organise all the concerts for university, and I really started loving ordering everyone around and rather than being on the stage. And so after I finished my degree, I actually did a double major in ethnomusicology and performance, and it just really took a sort of a bent into backstage. I got a job at the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. I moved to Sydney, and I was an orchestral assistant, and I really loved really creating the experiences for people to enjoy. And I suppose that then has just led me from one step, came back to Adelaide, got a wonderful programming fellowship at the Adelaide Festival Centre that really started my producing and my creative producing. So yeah, so people, Maria Callas, obviously.
Right. That's the name.
One of the, growing up, listening to her at home, but also she had a really difficult career. She was at a time of the woman that wasn't skinny, wasn't right, had dark hair, was ethnic, was of Greek background. I'm Maltese background, my mum's Scottish, my father's Maltese. And at that time, there weren't many stories being told by different cultures within Australia at that time, to be honest. So she was very much, I'd listen to her and dream of great things. And then further, as my careers unfolded, there's just so many women. I was lucky to work with Kate Blanchett, who really taught me a lot about sort of being humble, and she's just an incredible teacher as well as an inspiring actress. She does what she feels is right for her in her career. She doesn't have to fit into a certain mould. She always took art projects over big Hollywood, blockbusters, and so just different people along my journey.
Great, thank you. Emma?
Well, what led me to pursue a career in the arts, or my passion for the arts, actually sort of stemmed from the arts helping reveal the world to me as a young person. And I'd grown up, in my family, we didn't really go to galleries and museums. We didn't go and see many theatre shows. Had quite a very tight community around us. And when I was in my teenage years, I decided to break free of that a little bit. And as many people in those years do, they started to find things for themselves, and it was a pretty significant time of my life. But art was really what revealed the world to me. It helped me, I guess, grapple with different ways of knowing the world, different cultural contexts and stories, I guess lived experience, and the bravery and the honesty with which artists revealed their own experiences. And so I just began a love affair with art, and everywhere I went, I sought out opportunities to visit art galleries and museums, but also go and see shows and see live music. And every time something new opened up inside me. And whilst I pursued business and marketing studies in my university years, with the strong encouragement of my family, who really wanted to make sure that I had good employment opportunities as an adult, and I wanted to be independent, I could not resist that calling and that urge. And I guess when the word vocation comes to me around my passions and my purpose, and that's really what drew me to the arts, actually, and it really continuously sustains me.
And women artists who've inspired you?
Oh, there are just so many. I was thinking about the possibility of this question and how to frame it best. But I would say some of the artists that I think both challenged me the most and therefore gave me the most reward is artists like young British artist Tracy Emin and her work My Bed, which completely blew my mind when I was in my late teens. to Namunapu Maimuru White, who is an incredibly significant Yolngu artist who is up in Northern Territory. I had a chance to meet her in real life, in person last year while she was working on bark paintings. She's just been shown at the Venice Biennale last year and presenting work all over the world as well as in Australia. And I have a small Namunapu in my home, which I just absolutely treasure. But my role at Guildhouse, leading an organisation that's dedicated to championing artists and creatives across the state of South Australia, I had the incredible privilege of working directly with so many powerful and inspiring women. And Dr. Ali Gamilia Baker is one of those, and Catherine Truman. People who they live what they say, and their work is their life. They are practicing artists in every aspect of what they do.
Thank you both. That's a really interesting point about revealing the world through art. And I sometimes think that artists have different eyes or ears or different ways of thinking that to those of us who aren't artists, although we all clearly can make our own art to some extent, but they help us see things that we might otherwise miss. The topic for today, of course, is courageous women in the arts, and I put you two in that category. So what's the most courageous thing you've done in your career so far, at least that you're willing to share with this audience? And Emma, we might go to you first.
Sure. I think one of the most courageous things I've done in my career is actually make the decision to transition from a path that I was on, which was working in marketing and business, and then in philanthropy, to shifting and working, devoting myself to working in the arts. And that meant taking on further studies and committing myself to that and really putting myself out there. I reached out to so many incredible women, particularly who I admired working in the arts, and asked them for advice, and they gave it so freely and willingly. And I guess that moment to decide to make something different happen was that was a turning point for me.
Okay. Rachel?
I think for me, actually, founding Illuminate Adelaide to create a whole new major event was scary in its own right, and starting it as a woman. Obviously, my co-director is not. It's Lee Cumberledge, a lovely gentleman. But for me, not many women create or are the founders of big events. It tends to not be the pathway. And so for me, and also it was COVID, we had a lot to get off the ground and to keep going through that period. And we're here 5 years later. I'm just tremendously proud because it took a lot of courage to keep going at a time where, it's very hard to create something, let alone sustain it. So very proud. And that, I think for me, it really just going in those doorways, asking, for the support to get a major event up, it took a lot of courage.
Well, I'm really glad you did. I'm glad you persevered. Now, naturally, the timing of today's Winter Conversation series is designed to enable people to hear more about Dangerously Modern and more about Illuminate. Now, Illuminate actually starts this evening, so I can't really ask anybody who's been yet, but I can obviously do that for Dangerously Modern. Could you put up your hand if you've been to see the exhibition at the Art Gallery in South Australia, Dangerously Modern?
Bravo.
Can you keep your hand up higher? It's a bit hard to see up here. If you've been more than once? Okay. I think, I've been 4 times so far. I really love it. It's a big exhibition. There's an enormous amount to it. And of course, I have the advantage of living very close. But Emma, what's it all about, Dangerously Modern? And I'm keen also, because it comes through very clearly, particularly if when you go, you've got time to read. I mean, it's beautifully curated, but if you've got time to read about some of the individual artists, what were some of the challenges they faced during their careers, and why are you calling it what you're calling it?
Sure. So Dangerously Modern came about through our Australian art department. Our curators, Tracy Locke and Elle Freak, who are extraordinary women in their courageous women in their own right, were really interested in exploring this particular period, sort of late 1800s, so 1890 through to 1940, when Australian women artists, professional women artists, were really starting to move out of Australia and take those big leaps overseas, in Europe particularly, where they not only were pursuing professional careers as artists, but they were coming together with each other in those places in Europe, but also mixing and mingling with incredible people of that milieu of Europe, and they were part of a melting pot of international modernism. So the story of 50 trailblazing Australian and New Zealand-based artists who took this incredible journey, this courageous sort of moment after suffrage. So it's a really important time in history where women still had a lot of barriers. There was a lot of restrictions, and I'll touch on that in a second, but they did commit. They made that enormous commitment and effort to decide to be brave and bold and courageous and make that journey. And many of them never returned to Australia. And that's one of the other reasons why this show is so important. It tells the story of 50 artists, some of which you may be very well familiar with, like Margaret Preston and Stella Bowen, and of course Grace Cossington-Smith and Grace Crowley. Some of these names are almost household names when it comes to Australian art, but there are a whole host of artists in this show that have been purposely included in that cohort because they have been overlooked by art history. And something that's very critical to mention is art history canons, like anything that is official or published, is this almost becomes then the future reference point when you're thinking about creating something new. Now, if you've been omitted, it's very hard to reinsert yourself back into that story. And so that's why this show is so incredible, is that it almost really readdresses that history moment. Bernard Smith is a very famous Australian art historian, and in 1988 published this incredible tome, which became kind of the Bible of art history for Australia, and a lot of these women were just written out, and he dismissed them as mere messenger girls. So this show really delves into some of the restrictions or the life experiences of many of the artists, the conditions under which they worked, the work that they created, and particularly what it contributed to international modernism. And so some of those barriers you mentioned, I mean, mobility is one of them. It's a very big journey to take. Financial independence, most of these women didn't have financial independence, or that was managed through their family estates or trusts, and many of them weren't actually independently wealthy. So Eileen Mayo did life modelling in order to fund her journeys. Marie Tuck, who was a South Australian artist included in the show, was shoveling snow to be able to save up her pennies, and other people taught. So it really, there were some of those barriers, but it was also just the prejudice, I guess, of independent women at that time.
I'm going to give you a second question, if that's okay, because it just enables us to go a little bit deeper, and then I'll do the same for Rachel. There are a large number of portraits of women by women in the exhibition, right? You sort of, by the time you get to the end, you suddenly think, I've barely seen a portrait of a male here. There are a couple, but it's mostly women. At this time in history, audiences have grown accustomed to seeing women painted by white heterosexual men through what is sometimes referred to as the male gaze. Very generally, did the women artists depart from this viewpoint, and if so, how? What can you, from an art history perspective, I mean, everyone will have their own views on it, either on what I've said or what you're about to say, but what does art history tell us about that?
Well, that is a profound shift, actually, and I think you've pointed to something that's really, really important. And I love being in the gallery space and just walking through the spaces and overhearing what people talk about when they're taking the show in. And I often love to be an observer. I'm sure Rachel's the same. There's a secret pleasure you take in seeing people enjoy and take in the projects that you get to work on. One of the comments that I overheard someone talking about is just how many portraits of women reading there were in the show. And so that speaks to more than just about observing what women actually want to do. They don't necessarily want to be always objects of desire. They actually want to have some introspection and some things that fuel their own minds and bodies. But so that in itself tells you something. It's about the woman having a space of her own, which, you know, to quote Virginia Woolf, the importance of a room of one's own is something that is a thread that runs through this show. People in domestic spaces, not to domesticate them, but to value them. And Bessie Davidson's beautiful, it's an interior of a bedroom. And when you look and pay attention closely, it reveals so much more than just being a bedroom scene. The hairbrush is precariously left dangling over the dresser. The beautiful chair, the red bold chair, has got this gorgeous kimono that's just been thrown off. The bed is unmade. She hasn't bothered to make her bed. Why would she? So it's her bedroom. And then you have this sort of little window glimpse into seeing her female partner's profile. Just a little clue into her personal life. What she's chosen to reveal or conceal is her choice. And there's some absolutely stunning portraits of women by Janet Cumbray Stewart comes to mind. She works with pastels and they're so luminous, and they're nudes, but they don't feel overly sexualised. They feel very honest and very warm and just truthful. And Nora Hyson, and I know we share a love of Nora. Nora Hyson's self-portraits live large in this exhibition. And, you know, it's her sort of almost her sense of discovery of herself and claiming her own sense of profile. So Nora Hyson was the daughter of the very, very famous South Australian artist Hans Hyson. And she really struggled in South Australia prior to her overseas time in London to have her own identity. She was, I think she was very much under the shadow of Hans, which makes absolute sense in lots of ways, but going away and travelling and spending that time to develop her own practice, which she found very confronting because she received some pretty critical feedback when she was in London. But she had massive breakthroughs, and her self-portraits tell you everything you need to know about those breakthroughs. And then she came back and was the first female and youngest artist to ever win the Archibald Prize. And her career went gangbusters in the sense that she found herself and her work became her own.
That's a nice way to round that out. Now, Rachel, could just be Google, but when I typed light artist into Google, of the first 9 names to pop up, only one was a woman. Could just be Google. Are women well represented in light art across the world and in Australia, and why or why not?
Well, I think it is a hard area for women to break through. I mean, I think the whole art-like technology genre is new anyway. You know, it is a very profound art form, and we are wanting to make it a, you know, it's not just about putting lights in something and creating something. It is an artwork. These are artist professionals making work. And there's then the added tech, you know, male tech sort of domain. And I think a lot of women have found it hard to break through that area and then into the art and combine them. And I suppose that's why we're wanting to bring STEM into schools, you know, for young women to see that. I mean, that goes right through to the science or the tech world seem to be male dominated. So I think the women, there are a lot of fantastic female, you know, lighting. We've got some. We had a wonderful Lee Satchwitz from Eden. I don't know if many of you saw Eden at Isla, wonderful Isla last year, and she is an absolute powerhouse in terms of female production house. She's from Berlin and she's really making huge waves. We've got incredible artist Amelia Kosminski, who's doing work in Night Vision. So Night Vision's opened on Wednesday night if you want to get to in the Botanic Gardens. Obviously City Lights opens tonight, and she's incredible. She travels all around the world, and she's a video and lighting sort of installation artist. So I think there are more people coming through, but it is an area that needs to grow and have given opportunities, and I think that's what we're trying to do as well. We really scour the earth to find fantastic female voices, because they need to be represented, and it is changing, and there are lots of wonderful women, but we need to make sure that they're represented and people see their work.
Let's just extend that a little bit. Important that women's perspectives be seen and shown. What about the perspectives of other? I mean, we have got a broad understanding, I think, that we do better as a society when we value diverse perspectives, when we try and create a sense of inclusion and everyone feeling that they belong. But from an arts perspective, you know, the contributions of people from a wide range of backgrounds. I mean, you mentioned Maria Callas for you. There's that saying also, popular with young people at the moment, you can't be what you can't see. Yes. How do you think about diversity in the arts? You can take it more broadly than light, obviously.
Yeah, look, I think Emma sort of touched on it before, but art is it is a reflection of our society. That's what artists do. They tell their stories, and that then reflects and enhances our society. And it's really important that, whether it's women, First Nations, you know, diversity of any type, cultural, that people are getting to tell their stories, because you connect with that, as I did with Maria, as a young ethnic girl growing up. Wasn't blonde, wasn't skinny, didn't fit that surfy stereotype. And it's really important for people to see those stories, and I think art can deliver that, whether it's visual art, whether it's light art, whether it's performers, actors on stage that are your body shape and size. So art has such a strong way of doing that in our society, and it's so important that we as curators continue to push ourselves to tell as many stories and to have as many diverse artists that can reflect our society. So important that people can aspire, whether they're young people coming into the industry, whether they're older, you know, and I think that's what I know with Illuminate Adelaide. We've tried very hard to reflect different, have a diverse audience and have that sort of talk to them.
How was the gallery doing on that?
We are very committed to working with, do it in all sorts of layers, I guess is the way I would say that. It, you know, being what you can see is also about what you see on the walls. And so as you were saying, it's about the artists and the performers and the makers of art that you get to experience. So when you come into the Art Gallery of South Australia, we know the highest visitation is through our elder wing. You know, people they walk in, and naturally most people turn right and they go into the first gallery. And when we tell our story of Australian art, we want to make sure that Aboriginal experiences, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives are in the same conversation as colonial Australian art, and we've done that very intentionally. And so in terms of the diversity of audiences and engagement, we do that through the way we program our exhibitions and our displays and our events. The artists we invite in to engage with us through those programs, the artwork that we acquire, and we've invested heavily in terms of our time and our energy and attention to make sure that we are looking at our collection practices very critically. Where are our gaps? Asking ourselves those hard questions, and sometimes they're uncomfortable questions to ask because it means you have to be acknowledging your own unconscious bias. But that's a constant work that we do, and then it's about, of course, it's about our staff and the profile of the people that are helping us make those decisions, because those unconscious bias always exists. We just have to be aware of it and work with it. We also do a lot in the access and inclusion space. We're doing so much more. We've had an incredible staff member on staff who is deaf, and he has taught a lot of staff Auslan, and we do a lot of Auslan signing throughout both social experiences and for audiences, and we're thinking really laterally about that, and we're always open for conversations with our audiences about the things that they would like to see evolve at the gallery. That's our commitment.
We may well get some suggestions today. Welcome. Now look, before we move to questions, I've just got one more, questions from the audience that is, for each of you, and it's really in case it doesn't crop up in what you want to ask, but a question for the girls and women in our audience today who may consider themselves artists, professional or amateur. How can women continue to carve out space and time for their creative work, and what as a society can we do to help them?
I think the most important piece of advice that I've had myself, but I offer to people when I have, and people, I have been the privileged place of being asked this question and providing advice through my time at Guildhouse and at AGSA. It is about making the decision for yourself. If it's important, then make the time. Set aside the time to make sure that if that creative part of yourself feels satisfied in whatever way, whether that is through a hobby. I mean, I've just signed up for a Jam Factory wheel throwing class, just saying. So you never, find those ways that are going to fuel those parts of yourself. And if it's your calling to be a professional artist, don't shy away from it. There are so many ways in which to live a professionally fulfilled creative life. And I think sometimes the economics of it, or the perception of the economics of it, really colour people's decisions to pursue the careers and the life vocation that they really want to pursue. And when I talk to young people, I say, if that is your calling, if that is what you're passionate about, lean into it rather than pull back from it, because that is how you'll live a very happy and fulfilled life, and it doesn't have to be a 9-to-5 job for it to feel fulfilling. And this day and age, I'm seeing more and more people working. I know that the gig economy has a very bad rap, but there are really interesting ways that your creative experience and skills can be parlayed into other things, whether that's through teaching or through communication and facilitation. Artists and actors are often exceptional facilitators and teachers because of the way that they think and the way that they explore ideas. So there are multitudes of ways with which those creative skills can live in other ways which might remunerate a little better than a studio artist practice.
Yeah, and I also don't think, you have to be in a gallery or in a festival or to fulfil your creative need and vision. It can be in your lounge room, or it can be in your shed, or you're working with others. There's different ways to explore and express your creative instincts, whether you're a professional artist or you're not. But yeah, I think take time. I think women feel guilty to do that. I think it's to make sure that we say to ourselves and to other women, it's okay, this time's for you. We all need a bit of me time. Everyone does, male, female. We all need some time to just to make sure that we connect with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Now, we're now going to move to questions, and I've got a Government House colleague who's got what's called a roving microphone, Julie, who will bring that around. So if you think you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. I will, as I always do, I know we have a small number of students in the audience today, possibly even art students, if that's worked out the way it was supposed to. So if you think at any time that you want to ask a question, raise your hand, and whatever order I might have in mind, I'll help you jump the queue. But who would like to ask the first question? Oh my goodness, that's a first. Someone must have thank you. And please, if you're happy identifying yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself, just a little bit to explain the question, by all means do, but not compulsory.
Hi, my name's Sandra. I've got complex PTSD, so I've got assistance dogs. Just to explain why I'm sitting here. How can I help the art industry? I have a property, I have animals, livestock, whatever. I'd like to be able to open it up so that artists can explore that side as well. How can people like myself who have properties expand that so that artists can take advantage
That's a
of
very
the
generous
Australian
question.
culture?
Thank you, Sandra.
That is such a beautiful and generous question, to echo your words. I think that is such a valuable, what you have just described, space and time, places of contemplation, is quite often the thing that artists are looking for and can't access necessarily very easily. And there are a number of artists of all ages who find that opportunity to have residencies and moments of reflection, spaces to create that aren't their normal home environment, that supercharge their arts practice, but are vital. So I'm sure there are ways that could be explored, and there may be some opportunities that I could speak to you about afterwards, where I could connect you with a couple of other arts organisations in South Australia where they are very, very effective at connecting people up.
Yes.
And joining the dots.
I think the way is to find the organisations that then can support, whether it's Skilled House. I mean, Eucharia have a wonderful residence there that they provide for artists to be at. So it's about us connecting you with some people that run programs and then can sort of promote that for you and work with you to open that. It's incredibly generous.
The word contemplation was used, Emma, you just used it. But Rachel, it's the second time I've heard it today. It doesn't crop up in a normal day for me for whatever reason. But when you introduced me this morning to Javier Riera, whose projection is going to be shown on the facade of Government House throughout Illuminate, starting at 5:30 tonight, he mentioned contemplation too. Would you like to just talk a bit? You've promoted Illuminate a little bit, and you've promoted Dangerously Modern a little bit. Let's just talk about what's going to be on the facade of Government House for a minute or two while potential questioners frame their questions.
Yeah, well, Javier is an extraordinary artist who you met this morning, and his work is about, he works on projection. He's a projection artist, works on buildings or works on trees, sort of natural habitat, and his work is about, and it's called Time, and it's about contemplation and about using the geometry to make us stop and not only sort of embrace and reflect what our place of now, but also that meditative state that art can bring. And I think contemplation as an artist, a lot of people are trying to get to an outcome. We all do, don't we? We're sort of all rushing through our day. How many times do we stop and actually appreciate what's around us? And his artwork is about that, is about making people stop. and are not only showcasing the beautiful environment we're in, but also to give us time to reflect about what we're doing. So he was talking about that this morning.
Yeah. Actually, let me just ask, who in the audience, if you don't mind me asking, has actually been to see something at Illuminate in previous festivals? Okay, right, well, there we are. How's that for affirmation? But Rachel, perhaps for those who haven't, could you just describe what it is that you're actually trying to do? Because when people hear about illuminations, they sometimes think of, you know, the sales of the Opera House and pretty colours and all of those sorts of things. But you're doing a lot. Well, that's not to deny that Vivid isn't a really good arts festival, light festival. It is. But what is it that you and Lee are trying to do here, and how might the audience engage with what you're doing this year?
Well, Illuminate Adelaide, obviously it's 5 years old, and it is the centre of it is art, light, music and technology. And we really strove to create an event that people could see art in a different light, not necessarily have to go into a gallery or a space. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's about presenting art in a diverse context. And also with light art, there is such a variety of artists doing different things, whether it's an installation that you can play, whether it's a contemplative projection. We've got a fantastic, obviously we have wonderful ticketed events in the Botanic Gardens and the Adelaide Zoo, but City Lights was really important for us to make sure that art is for everyone, that you see Adelaide in a different light. You can wander down laneways that you normally see, but they're created, giving artists spaces to create their magic. From projections to incredible, last year we had AI projection. I don't know if you saw it, the wonderful French company with the singing heads, portraits.
Henry VIII portrait, from all portraits from the Art Gallery's collection.
And that's using AI technology, but in a fun way. It's about people getting off their screens and actually connecting together with technology and art as well, and fusing that art technology and creating different stories. And Lee and I really wanted people to experience, whether it moves you, whether it angers you, whether it's sort of, you're in awe of it. It's creating, sort of art for everyone.
Yep. And if I can just say, because we might as well have a little commercial for Government House as well too. When in 2022, Rod and I attended Illuminate for the very first time, and we had an amazing time, and we came back home and we thought, that's funny, why are we in darkness, and why is everything else across North Terrace lit up? And that's when we had a conversation with you and Lee about we'd like to participate. The very next year, 2023, coincided with the FIFA Women's World Cup, Australia and New Zealand, and the theme then was, I think it was Into the Light was our part of it, and Shalom Armand as a filmmaker,
documentary filmmaker,
produced, and I don't know whether any of you saw it, but it was a really wonderfully inspiring piece about amazing South Australian women over the course of our history. And I think Rod was away at the time, but I went to bed every night listening to the voices of these women talking just very briefly and modestly about what they'd done. But I think it was quite inspiring for young children, boys and girls, to come along and just see the whole thing lit up. And that year, I think we have people on the gate clicking as people walk in. 69,000 people came that year.
Yes.
Last year we talked with you ahead of time, as we always do. We'd love to participate again. What could we do this year? And Philip Rocker's work was shown on the facade, and just over 70,000 people came. But for us, for Rod and me, and I know Rod is attending his first ever Winter Conversation series, sitting up in the back row, but we really want this to be a house and gardens for all South Australians. We want it to be accessible. And I think last year we had almost 100,000 people came here for something, but the vast majority of them came for Illuminate. So please, if you've been before and you liked it, please encourage friends to come, because that wall out the front can be a bit off-putting for some people. Some people are not even sure what's behind it. The gates will be open. Rod and I will be there, maybe not with torches helping people in or clicking things, but we'll be in and out over the course of the festival, just chatting to people about what they're seeing and why they like it. So, just in terms of Philip Rocker's work and how you think of this, it might be interesting for the audience to hear about when you're putting it all together. Is it the shape of the buildings? Is it their normal use? What is it that helps you and Lee put all of this together? And you spend some time each year combing the world for great projections to bring to illuminate.
Yes, well, firstly, I'd like to thank the government because, what an incredible phone call to get. We had eyed off Government House the first couple of years and we were a little bit nervous to say, knock, 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 can we use your facade? And you've been extremely generous in the team. To have, because when we first started the conversation, we're like, it's 17 nights, it's every night for 17 nights, and you didn't even...
I've got earplugs.
Yeah. So it's extraordinary, and the best residents residents in the city. So it was extraordinary. Look, it's really important. Yeah, we curate city lights. It's very important to us that it really, while they are individual installations or projections or things that you play with, it needs to have a feel, a theme. We try sort of bright futures. This year, it's really about connection, human connection. Or connection to our place, and I think that's where Javier's work comes in. We like to mix it. Obviously, we've got tiny little children to sort of older people, groups, families, different generations, different cultures, and so we really make sure we try and tell as many stories, but we also give as many different experiences, from a mix of wonderful architecture projection to interactive games that kids and families can play together. And, it gives us so much joy when we're sort of walking, and it will start tonight, that we see strangers playing together on the street, interacting together, as well as, different groups and families. So, we do handpick. We really think about, we're really lucky to work with the art gallery. We have every year. Next year, we're very excited. We've already started conversation. We're actually going to go into the gallery, which is really exciting, and really open that up and change that. And I think that's why, we've got wonderful cultural partners with the library, and Adelaide University are an incredible partner, and they let us go into their beautiful Benithan Hall, which has been very special the last couple of years. And so we're very lucky with, being able to play with all these different, wonderful cultural institutions, plus Lot 14. Each year, it seems to organically create its own structure, or we find a couple of things that we're wanting to work. This year with Somnius as well in Benithan Hall, when we saw that, and we've been talking to the artists about that, we had the idea to have it inside. It's a beautiful big chandelier. You walk under it and it's got an incredible music score. So we find sort of certain pieces that we sort of want to bookend, and then we create and build the program around that. And
Rachel and Lee have been very generous with the gallery in that the way we have the conversation every year around our artistic program and the gallery's collection, and artists that we would love to work with and they'd love to work with, that help tell another story or extend the invitation out onto North Terrace. So Joan Ross is the artist at the Art Gallery of South Australia this year, and I'm not sure if people know Joan's work very well, but she's very playful, she's incredibly clever. You'll find it hilarious and absurd, and it's intended to be so, and she likes to really talk to some challenging histories around colonial stories and Australia as unceded country. But she does so with such humour and warmth, and there's some very interesting sort of mechanisms and playfulness that she uses. But she's a dangerous woman, and we've got an exhibition of dangerous women on at the gallery, and so there's this beautiful conversation between contemporary artists who are doing incredibly groundbreaking work, and our other exhibitions on in the gallery as well.
Actually, just as we're touching on the gallery, and I'm looking, by the way, for any hands that are raised, any hands that are raised will be instantly responded to, but the work of the curators in this exhibition. Rachel's just helpfully revealed a little bit about how you build a light festival, but from the point of view of an exhibition and the work over a couple of years, I think it was, to research and choose and borrow works and then think about where they'd go and what the story would be, and the discovery along the way of some things that hadn't been known. Can you just share with everyone a little bit about that? Because I think it's a really wonderful thing to understand, and not something that you would necessarily fully get unless you've got Elle, for example, by your side as you're walking through that, as Rod and I did the exhibition.
I'd be very happy to, because I think that curatorial work that happens within cultural institutions like the Art Gallery of South Australia, it is incredibly thoughtful and very academic, and then also intensely creative too, because you're looking to find create new knowledge and make new leaps. And what was very curious about this particular exhibition and the way it came about is that Elle Freak and Tracy Locke from the Art Gallery of South Australia were independently pursuing this idea of this exhibition concept, and it fitting in very well into the commitment the gallery had made over many years to explore these territories further. And we have a very strong holding of women artists' work from this era, and we started collecting women artists' work from 1893. And that's the same year that the Art Gallery of New South Wales also started acquiring work by women artists. And as it turned out, Wayne Tunnicliffe, who was also the head of Australian art at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, was also planning on doing an exhibition of this nature at the same time. And so to answer your question in regards to the nature of that curatorial work, it is a lifetime or a professional lifetime of research and knowledge about particular artists and particular shifts and movements in art history. That is their basis of their professional knowledge, and looking at, well, what are the stories that haven't been told? What is within the cracks of that, and who might be missing from the records? And so Tracy shared with me, for instance, that in some instances all she had was a single name and no other information was published. There might be one single black and white image and a single name and a year, and that's all they had to start with, and that would then send them down a track of exploration of archival records in family collections, letters between family members, documentation that might be held in state libraries. And from there grows this incredible story. There's a work in the show, and I'm going to be really cross with myself because I cannot remember the name of the artist, but it has not been shown publicly since 1890. And it's on display after serious conservation for the first time in that time at the Art Gallery of South Australia as a major significant work.
Now we have a question from a gentleman in a puffer jacket who's clearly getting ready to go to Illuminate tonight, just a little bit further forward, and then to the woman behind, so just here.
Thank you. Hello both.
Hello.
Craig from Adelaide University. South Australia is known to be a state of firsts in many ways. What would you both like to commission or curate or do that might be part of that? South Australia was the first to do this.
It's a great question, Craig, if I might say so.
Well, I think we are actually doing it this year with Horizons, with our Light and Drone Spectacular. I know it's the first time that a Light and Drone Spectacular has ever been, commissioned. It's never happened in Australia. We're working with the wonderful Jack Buckskin. We're working with a whole lot of video and creative designers to create a spectacular. So I'm very proud of that. But I think, we get artists coming to us, talking about pitching different. I feel that every time an artist creates a work, it's a first for them or for their, in South Australia, everything is unique. So we have many commissioning programs, and so for me, I think listening to the artists and creating their vision is a first every time. I don't know if that answers.
That's a clever answer. And I'm going to let Emma say, well, of course, it's dangerously modern. But we're then going to say, but what would the next thing be?
I'm going to say Tarnandy. I want to talk about Tarnandy briefly. Yes. In 2025, we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Tarnandy, which is the Festival of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Art and Culture, which is hosted here in South Australia, but it's a nationally significant festival and a moment where artists come from all over the world, all over the country, and in sometimes First Peoples from all over the world to come to Adelaide as a heartland, if you like, for storytelling and for celebration of First Nations culture. And I think that was a significant first when AGSA and the state government worked together to make Tarnanji possible 10 years ago. It was absolutely a first, and it changed everything in the way that institutions worked with artists, First Nations artists, to seed and co-create and to bring things up from within community. And what I would like to see is the next chapter of that, the next decade as being the next first that the Art Gallery South Australia and South Australia presents to the world.
Craig, I can't help thinking you might have a suggestion yourself. Is that the case or not?
I've got 15 suggestions.
All right, well, maybe that's for something for afterwards as well. Next question there, just behind, and then do we have any more coming up? I'm just going to manage the time a little bit. Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Helen, I'm a visitor here. I was interested in Emma talking about the canon and about the archivists and the work that goes into creating the sort of academic and resource side of gallery-based art. And I was wondering, given that most light-based art in the context of these festivals is very ephemeral, it's here today and gone tomorrow, how does it matter that it isn't part of that more studied and academic research? Is it okay for it to be here and gone, or does it somehow need to find its place, however temporarily, in the canon of great art that we've seen?
Thank you.
Ephemeral art is incredibly important in the canon of art and art history, and it has been for decades and decades, and I think we are embracing time-based media is another way we sometimes talk about art that tracks time with any medium. It might be moving image, it might be light, it might be an installation that involves many, many moving parts, but it is certainly part of the art history canon, and it actually has a lot of research being invested in it and a lot of curiosity and dedication. We currently don't have a curator, for instance, at the moment of time-based media or new technology art, but it's certainly part of our curator of contemporary art's responsibility in that it is contemporary art that is creating it, artists that are working in that space.
I'd also just like to say Helen is one of the most courageous women in the arts too. She runs an incredible festival in the UK and is brought the wonderful elephant through Trafalgar Square in London. She is an absolute, she is one of my absolute mentors and courageous women that I look up to in this area. So I do want to, she's over for Illuminate Adelaide, I'm not plugging it, but she, and her daughter, yeah, but incredible woman. So I just want to take my hat off to you because, yes. Sorry, you were going to ask.
Well, just, I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? When we talked about Philip Rocker as last year's artist for Charlotte Government House, you were able to point me to a whole, you gave me a whole range of links to look at, and I could see and imagine that. Now, I'm just wondering though, and I can't help thinking that you need one of those, what did you call them? Not ephemeral, courageous, time-based media.
I think we
curator.
It is,
curator,
yes.
because I think that's a really good point. Helen, is this being done elsewhere? What's the UK doing on this?
I think Emma's right. There is a sort of history. If you look at the work of people like Christo or others, that has sort of changed the way we think about ephemeral work. But in the light art world, it's usually gallery-based artists rather than those working outdoors that are regarded as, I suppose, serious is the question. And I suppose my campaign is for some of the artists who are working in this ephemeral and outdoor arena to be regarded as serious as some of their contemporaries who are based inside buildings.
Well, I think you've certainly put it on the agenda here, and
you could go first.
That can only be a good thing. All right, now
maybe we could be first with that, Craig.
Now we're coming up. Well, we might make this the final question here, and then because I know my official secretary wants to have the last word, as is absolutely appropriate.
My name's Mandy Jane, and I used to work in Arts SA. I'm retired, not in the arts development area, but as a communications marketing person. I hope my question as the last one is not too much of a downer when I ask, despite the fact, thank you, it's been really wonderful and inspiring to hear from you. Can you comment a bit on the challenges that you have with other funding areas such as sport or medical science or space development?
I don't know if we've got time.
Do you want to
No,
go
you
first?
go first. It's a
Well,
long
I'm
chat.
definitely not getting into this.
Wow, that's an age-old question, and look, I think working together, I do think it doesn't always look as though there is support for arts and culture along, all the very important things of health and well-being, but, sport. I mean, I think it would be great to remind people in the government that, the well-being is created by art and culture and inclusivity, and that helps our well-being. And I know that is a story that a lot of South Australian cultural institutions and as a body we try and talk, and it's hard always being, about economic impact as well as the social impact. And I think as an industry we need to keep talking about that and reminding people about that. And I just think working together, there's so many important areas, and they have to stretch far. And I think the way around that, it's not going to change. I don't think that is going to change whatever government comes in. Or unfortunately, I mean, there's different cultures around the world that do, I think, sometimes reflect on creativity as a more important vehicle.
As essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if the more we can champion that and talk about that and get people on board with that maybe we can change that.
And I think Illuminate's a great example. The numbers matter in the sense that people embracing it and speaking about how important and essential it is to their lives, whether they participate in a very deep way or they participate in the arts in a more of a surface level way. I think it's actually about that the groundswell coming from the population, from people.
Yeah.
And the essential nature is what opens things up for us to have those conversations about the ambitions we have and what could be for South Australia, which is arts and culture is one of our most distinguishing factors here.
It is.
And what we can do to build on that and amplify that is a huge opportunity for the state to celebrate and run with. And I would also say, though, that people aren't one-dimensional, and arts and culture is part of a broad spectrum of many, many interests in people's lives, and I really support and advocate for that.
I think also as an industry, the more we can collaborate and work together, it goes further. And I know that, we're very lucky at Illuminate. We have so many partners that help us to extend what we do. And I think the industry as a whole does that really well. We're a very collaborative industry. And I think that sort of tension with shortage of, sometimes grants actually really makes us think of different creative ways of how we can work and keep going. And I think that's maybe a really positive from it as well, that collaboration and togetherness can only enhance what we deliver to our society.
Well, I think that was a really nice way of rounding it out, actually, and I should mention the government's new arts policy, South Australia, a place to create, which does in fact, in terms of a policy framework, reflect much of what we've been talking about.
Yes.
I will now hand to the Official Secretary.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps I could encourage you when you leave here to walk across the road to the art gallery and book or go and see Dangerously Modern, which is, as I said before, open until the 7th of September. Can I also warmly encourage you to come back either tonight when we open at 5:30 or over the next few weeks to see the exhibition of Javier Riera's production as part of Illuminate. Our next winter conversation is going to be on Friday the 1st of August. The topic is South Australia in Space, with the special guest Catherine Bennell-Pegg, the Australian astronaut with the Australian Space Agency, which is of course headquartered here in Adelaide. Bookings for this event will open on 14 July on our website. Thank you very much for coming. Can I invite you to join me in thanking Her Excellency and our guests today?
You've got a little bit of homework to do with
I know, we do.
Thank you both very much. Thanks for having us.